So, what if your next vacation wasn't just a change in your scenery, but it actually changed you? Today's guest, Christopher Hill, has spent nearly 2 decades helping travelers move beyond sightseeing into meaningful impact and showing us what it really looks like to live boldly on and off the water.
Welcome to What Could Go Right, a podcast about living boldly on and off the water. I'm Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton. On this podcast, we explore adventure, connection, and stepping into a more intentional life. And we don't just talk about it, we invite you to join us on guided sailing trips around the world.
And if you stick around to the end, you'll hear our sailing update where we share where we're going, when, and which trips still have space. And you'll hear a sailing takeaway from somebody who's already come on a trip with us. In 2014, we bootstrapped a year on a fixer-upper sailboat with our 5 kids. We wrote a book about it called 7 at Sea, and that became a New York Times top 10 travel book.
Let's dive in. So our guest, Christopher Hill, is the founder of Hands Up Holidays and Impact Destinations, 2 luxury brands that blend travel, adventure, comfort, and contribution. For nearly 2 decades, Christopher has been helping travelers experience the world not just as tourists, but as partners in meaningful change. He joins us today from his home in New Zealand, where he lives with his wife, his 2 sons, and their dog, Zola. Christopher, welcome to What Could Go Right.
Thanks so much, guys. It's fantastic to be here.
It's so good to have you with us. We'll just share that we tried to do this interview before and it did not go right. And we liked it so much that we wanted to try again. So thank you.
What could go right? We could talk with Christopher twice.
Yeah, we could talk twice. Yes. I just think for listeners who are new to this idea, how would you describe philanthropic or impact driven travel just in really simple terms? And then we'll get to your story of how you started this.
Yeah, I guess at its most fundamental level, impact or philanthropic travel is really leaving a destination better than you found it, in its essence.
I love that. We see a lot of places where we hike and things it will say, leave no trace, so that nobody can tell you we're here. You're upping the ante a little bit and saying, yeah, make it better.
Yeah, I guess it's that equivalent of, some places or operations are carbon neutral, and then some go the next level and they're carbon positive. And that would be the equivalence. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So tell us the story again. Us again, our listeners, the first time. Tell us the story of how you came into this work and what drew you to combining travel with, contribution.
Yeah. Well, I did my studies here in New Zealand and then actually ended up getting a job in London in investment banking was my first job. And just a step just prior to that, I was lined up to work for a law firm here in New Zealand and got them to agree to me to travel for about 9 months before starting working for them. And my thinking at the time was I'll just get travel out of my system and then settle down and become a lawyer. And then whilst traveling, I ended up getting this job in London and accepting it and entered investment banking. And at that point, I guess 6 years into that, I took a trip then to South Africa. And on that trip, in addition to going on safari and staying at wonderful, beautiful lodges and exploring the delights of Cape Town and the garden route and the winelands, I also helped to build a house for a family in one of the townships just outside of Cape Town. And this changed my life, and it really enriched the whole travel experience for me in 2 main ways. It actually, in contrast to all that sort of 9 months of travel I'd done on that big trip just straight after university and all the other little trips I'd done in those 6 years in London, in contrast to those, I actually got to interact with the local people and hear their stories and got insights into their lives. And so, yeah, it added that extra dimension. Then the other dimension was that it just felt great to make a difference in the lives of the family that we were helping alongside to build. And so I got thinking, I've learned some good business skills. Why don't I put it into something I find a bit more meaningful and fulfilling and make it easy for others to have similar experiences to what I just had? And so that was really the catalyst for what became Hands Up Holidays.
Wow, that's fantastic. How did you find out about this family that needed help with their home?
Yeah,
Like, did someone
right.
organize that?
Yes. Yep. Well, again, when I first moved to London, I had 2 roommates, one of whom ended up moving to South Africa, and eventually he became a tour guide in South Africa, and we kept in touch over the years. And so he invited me down on uh, pretty much still in his early days of becoming a tour guide. He had sort of an off season at that point, and so he invited me down to do a trip around South Africa with him and his wife and a couple of other people. And so I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." I didn't need too much convincing for that. And on that trip, uh, around the campfire one night, we're just tossing around ideas of what I might do next. He was aware of the all nighters I'd been pulling in the investment banking
Mhm.
career and that it was definitely taking its toll. Like, as I said, I'd learned a lot, but it certainly they got their pound of flesh, shall we say. And as we were tossing around some ideas and he also knew that I loved to travel. That 9 months of travel that I did that I thought would get travel out of my system just did the opposite really. It just the flames. And so we're thinking about things to do in the travel industry. And one idea I just came up with as a concept really was the combination of sightseeing and giving back through service and volunteering. And he said, "Well, I've got a friend of mine and back in Cape Town. He was based in Cape Town. A friend of mine based in Cape Town who runs Habitat for Humanity down there. Do you want me to see if they've got a build going for the dates when we're back in Cape Town?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And as providence or serendipity or whatever you might call it, they did have a build going on at that time. So that was how I was able to get involved with it.
Okay, very cool. So this was very much a bit of luck. Like you had an interest and there was a lucky connection and a luck with the calendar that it was actually going on and just this like pearls of networking on the string of your life that brought this beautiful experience together and you got to have the idea and then experience it in pretty close succession and like you said
Yeah, very close.
that validated your idea that is what you wanted to do.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Fantastic. Yeah. Because I want to go back to this phrase that you used, which is to leave a place better than you found it. And it seems like that there's two ways, at least through your organizations, that you're doing this. One is through environmentally leaving it better than you found it, and or sort of socially, financially, economically for the people that are living there. How can we make it a better place for them to be who are going to keep living there after we come and go from our vacation? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely one way to look at it. And we certainly, for instance, do separate the projects out in terms of when we're thinking with Hands Up Holidays, we primarily focus on families. And within that, families with kids as young as 5 can get involved. We say, it depends on the family, but from as young as that, particularly in those wildlife conservation projects with meal preparation and helping create enrichments to stimulate the animals. For instance, if they're at say a wildlife rescue center, for instance, in Costa Rica, or on our elephant conservation projects in Thailand, India, and Sri Lanka, you can, as I say, prepare those meals. There's a strong emphasis on education, really. So you're learning about those animals, even, so from a young age, it's fascinating to get pretty close to them, not to touch, but get really close and observe them in their natural environment, particularly those in that context of the elephants. The emphasis, as I say, is on education, educating them about the torture that animals the elephants have to go through in order to be made rideable. So that's something we're quite strong about and there's no riding of the elephants. As I say, it's a strong education lens for that. And then we love to encourage the children, once they hit their teens, roughly, to get involved in those community projects, because that's also where the magic happens, like happened to me in South Africa, where you get that interaction. And then another way of looking at it, Eric, is that you can leave the world a better place. Well, actually, there's thinking on my feet a bit. There's 3 ways I think you can leave the destination a better place after a trip. One is through putting a lot of time in through voluntary service, and this is where organizations such as Peace Corps or voluntary service abroad comes in, where you spend months at a destination and so you're giving of your time. And another way is giving of your skills, and that might be you might be a doctor, or you might be a physio or something like that. Or it could be much more broad. It might be an engineer. It might be someone with marketing skills who goes to let's say, Zambia and helps with a not for profit there. Who knows? But so there's different ways you can use your skills. And then the third way is through your funds. And this is probably our sweet spot with both Hands Up Holidays and Impact Destinations. And certainly with Hands Up Holidays, I describe it as a philanthro volunteering approach. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that if there is a house to be built, it's the funds that our clients bring, which is the primary benefit that the client brings in order to pay for the materials and also to employ local people to actually do most of the work. And then our clients will come and do the finishing touches and all be supervised by, as I said, by the local experts who are being employed. And then with impact destinations, it's even more philanthropic, shall we say, in that with that, the idea is that actually you're not contributing in the hands-on way with Hands Up Holidays, which is where the magic happens for the client. With impact destinations, it's your philanthropic donation which will enable the experts to do what they do best, but it also enables or unlocks a unique experience for the guest. So for example, say and also these can be separated into those environmental, wildlife, or community projects. I'll give an example of each. Say on a trip to Indonesia, guests can fund the rescue of an orangutan family that's facing habitat loss due to palm oil production, fund that relocation to a protected reserve. And then in return for that, the guests actually are able to go to a exclusive tract of rainforest and go with their guides into this rainforest and see orangutans, sun bears, and other wildlife in the wild. And
Mm.
so that's the experience that gets unlocked with that. And then with an example of a community-based one would be in Australia, guests can fund a scholarship for a promising Aboriginal arts student. And in return for that, they get to spend an afternoon with an established Aboriginal artist from whom they can commission their own unique work of art. And and so you get something you can take home with you and have it forever. So these are really about leaving a legacy and being able to say, I saved the life of an orangutan family whilst we're on our vacation in Indonesia.
So it's almost like their donation, their financial contribution helps at the front end for somebody or whether it's an animal or a human at the beginning of a project, and then they get to go while they're on that trip, they get to see the back end of what their contribution is going to create. They get to see the orangutans in the wild that they're helping get there, or they're able to see somebody who an artist that's gone through the scholarship program, but they get to see them on the back end. So
Yeah,
they get
true. Very
it's
true.
like they get to plant the seed and then go enjoy some of the fruit.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true in those examples. There's other ones that probably don't quite fit that model so perfectly. Off the top of my head, we've got one in Italy where guests can make a donation to an incredible, they call it refettorios, but they're soup kitchens, for lack of a better word, but they're really much with a wonderful ambiance, and so the whole atmosphere is quite lovely. But they're serving, the idea is that it's providing healthy, nutritious meals to people who couldn't otherwise afford them. And then in return for that donation, you have a session with a Michelin chef, a masterclass with a chef. So it doesn't quite fit that model, but still the principle applies of making the donation and then unlocking a unique experience.
Yeah, but it's related. It's definitely
Yeah.
related. Yeah, and being on both ends of the scale. That's really beautiful. So, is there like, hey, we have these 15 trips you can choose from? Or what happens when someone calls you? Do you craft something specifically for that group or that family?
Yeah, great question, Emily. Yeah, every trip is tailor made for as I say, the family, the couple, the group, whatever the case may be. Yeah, we don't have anything off the shelf. You can't just go to the website and book that trip. There needs to have the interaction with myself. Actually, that's my passion project is crafting these itineraries for our clients. So every single inquiry that we get comes through to me, and I handle them personally.
That's very cool. Yeah, I keep hearing you use this word magic, Christopher, and I wonder if you might share with us some of the magic. We've heard what was really magical for you working with Habitat for Humanity that first time. what have been some of the magic situations, maybe both for your clients in a couple of contexts and then also for the local beneficiaries? Just some of
Yeah,
your
gosh.
highlight reel stories from these
Yeah, sure.
experiences, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think one that I reflect back on a lot is the trip that we arranged in quite early days for a family from the US to Morocco. And the sightseeing parts of that was exploring Marrakesh and going to the Atlas Mountains, doing some hiking and a bit of time out on the coast, on the beach as well. And there give back project was helping to build a library at a school, and they had quite young children, and the children did get involved, absolutely, but that was strong emphasis for them on playing with the local kids as well. And the trip went really well, and I just sort of ticked it off as another successful trip, and didn't think too much about it at the time. But a few months later, around Christmas time, got an email from the family saying, "You won't believe it. Our kids have said that they don't want their Christmas gifts this year, and they want to give the gifts to the children that they were playing with in the school." And yeah, that just blew me away. And I think is it just typifies exactly what we're about, and why we focus primarily on families, which wasn't actually the case incidentally from the outset. When I first set it up, I had sort of young professionals in mind, 25 to 35-year-olds who were cash rich and time poor, who
The
wanted
earlier
to.
versions of you.
Well, yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I was pretty much modeling myself at that point, but really, right from the get go, we were getting bookings from families, and they weren't on my radar at all when I was setting it up. So I'd ask them, "Why are you booking with us?" And they'd say things like, "Well, we want our kids to have a great family bonding experience," or our kids come from pretty privileged backgrounds, and we really want them to appreciate just how fortunate they are. And so this really resonated with me, and even more so now that I do have kids of my own. And so we did shift our focus, not exclusively, but certainly primarily to that family market. But here's another story from here's a non-family story, shall we say. It was a woman who was I think just retired and hadn't really traveled at all. So was a bit nervous about it, but still, wanting to make a difference. If I recall correctly, she was a retired nurse, and she decided she wanted to go to Africa, and specifically to Kenya was where she ended up going. So she required quite a lot of hand holding leading up to the trip and during the trip, which is probably, I mean, it's normal to give hand holding. She was sort of next level, but that was completely fine. But the reason I shared this particular story was, yeah, as I say, she was a bit nervous, but after her trip, she pretty much booked the next flight back on her own, and she'd rented an apartment and bought a car, and was driving herself around Nairobi, and as I say, yeah, had rented this apartment, and so she decided she was going to spend several months actually coming back to that first way I said to help was through your time. So she just I want to spend a lot of time here, and so it was wonderful to see that transformation in her, to go from someone who just was really, as I said, needed a lot of hand holding and really had no idea. But after doing the trip, got immersed, and she was away.
It boosted her confidence and also her sense of purpose, and so she just
You nailed it,
got
Emily. Yeah.
after it. Yeah, wow, that's amazing, Christopher.
I love that shift that you've described, both for the kids who are kind of saying, hey, it's fun to receive gifts, but I'd love to do more giving this year. And for this woman to go from a place of trepidation or maybe a little bit of insecurity to just such a place of confidence. And
Yeah.
I love the word that you use, contribution, that it's about, it's not about supplanting. It's not about trying to take over. It's just saying we're here to give it and contribute to the good things that are already happening. And I think that's got to be so satisfying to see those transformations take place in the individuals and the clients that you work with.
Yeah, it really is. And it's what gets me out of bed, with excitement every morning. We've got a family traveling with us in Bali right now. And today, so they recently arrived, and so yesterday they did some whitewater rafting and a home cooking class. And today they are going out to day one of helping to really what I describe, build a classroom that they funded fully. It's actually slightly unusual for us, not crazy unusual, but slightly unusual in that it's actually grandparents with their teen granddaughter. And what I didn't know until really recently was that it was the granddaughter that's been driving this, and that she wants to use her. I think they're an affluent family. and use the money she has to make a positive contribution. And so, as I say, this recent email I got from the grandfather was, yeah, there's hope for millennials yet, huh?
That's really beautiful. Oh, you were gonna say
I was gonna say, I have a question for you as a business operator, because we're in a somewhat similar space. You're talking about this family that's in, was it Bali? You said right now, and you're in your home in New Zealand talking with us. Do you go on some of these trips? Obviously, earlier you had your own experiences. Are you out there with your clients? Are you, do they go on their own and you just sort of tee everything up, or do you have somebody in country that is their local guide? What's sort of the balance there and how you operate?
Yeah, great question. Philosophically, we like to employ local guides. And so on a family trip, I don't go on those trips. No. I mean, I go on the scouting trips to sort them out. And coincidentally, I did do pretty much the same trip that they're doing now 3 years ago in Bali with my own kids. But yes, I go on scouting trips, but it'd be a little bit weird if I was sort of tagging along with the families. And like I said, philosophically, we like to employ local guides, but we just really quickly, we have a couple of other brands that I run that I do go on. And those are, we have corporate trips and we also have school trips. And so that's hands up incentives and hands up school trips. And on those trips, I do go on quite a lot of those
Okay.
to help coordinate those
When they're
bigger
bigger
groups.
group trips with a
Yeah.
kind of a critical mass of people as opposed to an intimate family trip
Yeah,
where
exactly.
you don't want to
Yeah.
be tagging along and, fifth wheeling, as we would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm curious, going back just a little bit, like, what is that typical transformation? Transformation is never typical. I do recognize that. But you can be in situations that tend to facilitate an awakening or an awareness. So I guess that's what I'm asking about. How do people generally show up versus how they end up on one of your trips?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Huh. As you say, there's nothing, there's no cookie cutter
Mhm.
and one size fits all um, person or outcome. Yeah, as I say, generally, one thing is that I think really lucky to have the clients we have and that, they come to us because they want to make a difference. And so,
Mhm.
no one's forcing this upon them. So there's already that positive mindset and they're just beautiful clients with wonderful hearts already.
Mhm.
But still magic does happen. And so we're starting from a high base, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so then the transformation is real, but it's not. I guess typically it deepens that that heart and the spirit more than the 360-degree, probably 180, whatever the right
Yeah,
description
yeah.
is. If you know what I'm saying.
But you're building on something that's already there. They're actually
Yeah,
grow if they're already generous, they sort of grow in that good thing that they already
exactly.
have.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah.
perfect sense. I know when we lived on a sailboat for about a year with our kids, the oldest, I asked her towards the end of our journey, "How has this changed you?" And she said, "It hasn't changed me, but it's made me more myself." Those experiences and the decisions that she had to make along the way and the different levels of intensity, both beautiful and challenging things, just kind of brought into focus that continuity of self. So that makes sense too. Just be like, I'm, like, more myself, more intentional about this, more rooted in, like you said, these generous desires. It's self-validating, right? Like those
Yeah,
kids who went out, had a great time, and they were like, "We don't want presents. We have everything we need. What about these other people?" So, that's really
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. You phrased it so well there, Emily.
Well,
Thank you.
you're giving me some ideas, Christopher, because we do sailing trips. We're on the water a lot. And yes, then there are environmental impacts that we could be contributing to, or,
Mhm.
our crew members could be contributing to. And also, honestly, in a lot of the places that we go, there's a real juxtaposition between affluence and poverty. In the Caribbean, there's a lot of money in certain hands, and there's a lot of hands that are empty. And
Mm.
there's a lot of people that could benefit from a hand up,
Mhm.
or and I'm just thinking, makes me want to explore. Hey, before people get on the boat or after they get out on the boat? Is there a way that in these places where you venture beyond the marina, you venture beyond the cruise ship dock, sort of into the, places that we've been, we've been up into the hills of these islands and we've seen how a lot of people who live there as their home, how they live in very different circumstances than the resorts that are right down along the beaches or things like that. And are there ways to couple sailing trips with the kinds of opportunities that you've discovered where people can not only have a beautiful, relaxing vacation of snorkeling and island hopping, but also then helping, contribute to the community or the ways that people need education or housing. Anyway, you've got me really thinking, which I love. So thank you.
And I think it comes naturally. I would just say two examples that I thought of. One, just we would come to a beach and it would be somewhere that probably somebody isn't coming to that beach every month. Like we would come into places that are rarely seen, and immediately the kids would see, beach trash that has like come in from old wrecks or just like come into the shores, like where these nets or lines or plastic, or like where does it all come from? Who knows? And immediately, just as a form of activity, they just start collecting garbage on the beach, right? Like, oh, let me clean this up. And one of our daughters was just saying, and she's 24 now and expecting her second child. And she was saying, oh, yeah, I remember we went there and I spent the entire time trying to get this net out from
It's
between
been
the rocks that had
buried
been
in the
washed up
sand. And
on shore. And another time I think of how we were in Puerto Rico for a very short amount of time and we love libraries, and libraries are really suffering in that country. They weren't getting funded and used. And we went to this library and they had an activity to do, which is like at the library, they were also taking care of puppies, you know, and they just had like kids come and feed the puppies and wash the puppies and just like play with the puppies. And it was definitely a great experience for the kids, but it was also something that needed to happen just in this local community. And it wasn't, we didn't pre-plan. These are things that we just chanced upon, but they did make those places stand out as like, we showed some care for this place. We put some labor into this place, and it made it more special for us. And obviously you're working with locals, right? Like we're chatting up the local librarians and getting their take on the community and hearing about how their library is funded and what they plan to do to keep it going. And we felt connected that way. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
beautiful.
having not been on one of your trips, like from that limited experience, I can, say, yeah, that makes it better.
Yeah, well, you're really describing one of our trips, so thank you, without having gone on one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else am I if okay, here's a question I had. A lot of people do feel a pull for adventure, but it can still be scary, like that very nervous woman you told us about and may feel hesitant. What holds people back, and yeah, maybe just speak to that. What do you think holds people back?
Mm.
And like this woman, for example, why was she so nervous? Maybe other people have a similar fear.
Yeah, well, I know I guess I can only really speak to my own well, no, I will speak to my own experience. Before I got to Africa, on my first time, I thought Africa was purely jungle.
Mhm.
And basically need a machete to get around. That was sort of the misconception I had in my mind. So I mentioned that really, that I think people have a lot of misconceptions about a destination, and this can be largely fear driven. So it could be that sort of fear of wild animals, snakes, spiders, or it might be, oh, I'm going to get robbed, I'm going to get murdered.
Mhm.
And this is, probably people who live in a city that has, high murder rate. Um, but it's that sort of the unknown is just can be can generate fear and stop people from stepping out, I think is and so to a pretty large extent, the media has something to answer for there. In that there are so many times that probably off the top of my head that the best thing I can think of right now would be there are undoubtedly a number of mobile phones being snatched in London right now.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah, I've heard of
the
that.
media portrays it as this epidemic and, don't go out on the streets sort of thing. Whereas actually it might happen, but, it's not like it's definitely going to happen, but that's the way it's portrayed.
Yeah. So what do you do when people come in and they say, "Oh, I want to do a holiday in a place I've never been before that sounds kind of exotic to me, but I'd love to do something useful, but I'm also actually kind of nervous about my own safety." Like what's your
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, a few things to speak to that would be one, speak to our track record of, 100% safety record. It would also be to dig a little deeper into what those fears might be. And let's say it is something around, fear of being mugged or something like that.
Mhm.
I said, well, yeah, I mean, that can be valid. If, I mean, there's two aspects to it. One might be, let's say, well, we've been talking about South Africa, Johannesburg. If you were walking around, flashing your Rolex watch and so on in an area you shouldn't be, then there is a chance you get, a decent chance you get mugged. Uh,
Mhm.
so, partly it's briefing people about, how to what to dress and bring appropriately, but then also the aspect of our local guides come in who you'd be with, who know where to go and where not to go. And so you can rely on that. And then also, if another part is the fact that all our trips are tailor made. And so, yes, I mean, Johannesburg, it doesn't really feature in our itineraries. I mean, if someone asks for it, maybe they want to visit Nelson Mandela's house or the Apartheid Museum. Great, we'll incorporate it and bring in those safety measures. But at the same time, for most of our itineraries, we focus on the really safe areas that have got the great track record.
Yeah, so you just give them, like, hear their fear, validate it. You're not wrong about what you've heard, but we're going here and there, and you'll be with someone, and just kind of like walk them through what to expect. I know we get it a lot with, oh, I'll be seasick. We
Right?
say, great, Eric is the person who's most likely to get seasick, and he does these 15 different things
Like 15
Right.
different
to
strategies or
help,
trip.
account for that and not get sick because he doesn't want to be sick either. And so, like, sounds really similar. Just kind of like take that fear in. That's real. It makes sense. And but here's what you can actually expect. You
Yeah.
know, on our
Yeah.
on our trips.
Or people will ask me, what about pirates?
Yeah,
And I say, we're not going to the parts. The pirates are real. We've all seen the news and the movies, but we don't go to those
we don't go
places.
there. Yeah,
From our
I can
standpoint,
relate.
are pretty easy to lay to rest. It sounds like for you as well. I'm curious. So you talk about these local guides, which seems so wonderful, both for them, for your clients. How do you find them, and how do you choose who you work with?
Mm. Yeah. Well, so between that trip I took in South Africa back in uh 2002 trip, straight after I took a year out, I did some more study up in Canada, and then I spent the next 2 years traveling and building relationships with travel partners and in the destinations and communities and meeting with guides, some of whom we work with 20 plus years later. And so it's really by doing those scouting trips that I mentioned earlier and that 2 year serious trip I took before we launched, which laid the foundation for the relationships and meeting the guides and our travel partners firsthand. And there was something else I wanted to mention that you touched on earlier. Oh, I think it was in the context when you said contribution as well, Eric, because as well, in those 2 years and in the building relationships with the communities, it's always been the approach of not going in with what I think should be done. It's more a consultation with the community and asking them, firstly, if they'd welcome people from overseas to come, and then if they say yes, then it's asking them what would be of benefit to them. What could that look like? And then it's up to us to market it to people and get the people to participate in that. That's an aside. But so answering your question around the guides, it's really just through those, just going out and meeting and developing those relationships.
Very hands-on, very person to person. I love that. I guess it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was unexpectedly asked to produce some films for a nonprofit organization it's called Charity Vision, and they do eye surgeries for people around the world where they have curable blindness. And what you're saying about going in and kind of asking what the community needs and working with local guides, one of the things that I came to really admire about this organization, because I was helping them create some marketing materials and basically helping them tell their story so that they could use it to expand their reach, expand their donor base, and so on. And they really focused on finding and hiring or partnering with, I would say, finding and partnering with local doctors and training them, saying, hey, we're going to give you some additional training that you may not get in your country. We're going to help you set up your practice. And here's what we ask. We ask you to, once a month, do these kinds of trips where you're going to get into parts of your area that where people can't come to you, you're going to go to them. And for people that can't afford to pay, we're going to fund you enough so that you don't have to charge them. You can do this work for free. And we're going to help you build a practice that for the people that can afford it, they're going to pay you, and you're going to have a thriving practice amongst you're going to build your own clientele.
And we're going to help you with equipment and maintenance.
Yeah. And so they did this so successfully that they were able to help the people that couldn't get to the doctors. They were able to help those that weren't in need. And they were also able to help set up thriving medical practices in the country with local doctors so that when COVID happened and nobody could travel, and doctors that are normally taking time to travel from first world countries to third world countries and couldn't this time, this organization was able to continue almost without breaking stride. They just said, we're going to keep sending you the equipment, or we're going to keep sending you the funds that you need to keep doing what you're doing, because it was all in country. And so the fact that you've been able to sort of find a way in the travel space to go out, meet them, vet them, select them, and have partners that are over multiple decades you've been able to work with. That's pretty phenomenal, and I congratulate you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, it's a beautiful model.
And it lets you be home with your kids,
Yeah.
and still provide great experiences for your guests, and good jobs, it sounds like,
Mm,
for your guides.
mm.
Yeah, it does sound like a better guest experience because, like you said, if you're partnering with somebody for over 20 years, they've been in that same area all that time. Like, who's going to know if it doesn't get more local than that. And that is what people want to have. What excites you most about the future of travel and its potential to like connect people and create change? Like you said, this is why you're getting up every day. What does the future look like?
Yeah, well, I think it's keep doing what we're doing.
Mhm.
And I think, our biggest challenge really is still awareness of making people aware that it is possible to travel at the luxury end, but also to give back. And like we said right at the outset, to leave the destination, leave their vacation better than they found it. And so that's the mission I'm on, is to help raise that awareness and thus grow the number of people that do get to experience travel this way, and thus make the world increasingly better place.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I mean, I'm just going to ask where people can learn more about you unless you have anything else.
Nope.
Yeah, let's find out. So tell us, these sound like incredible experiences for body and soul. Where can people learn more about you and the work you're doing, or sign up for a custom, tailor made
Yeah.
trip of comfort and contribution? Philanthro volunteering.
Yeah. The websites are the best. We are on the socials as well, but why not to go straight to the heart of the websites, which is handsUpHolidays.com and impactdestinations.com.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll definitely put links in the show notes below. You've been on such an adventure, not just going on your own travels, but building this business and creating these experiences for other people. I just really want to congratulate you for following your passion because, you could have been an investment banker
Or a lawyer.
or a lawyer.
Well,
You're building houses and classrooms and
Whatever it
rescuing
is.
animals, and yeah, I see the smile. It seems like you've found your place.
pretty happy. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I think our listeners will love it.
Well, thanks, Emily and Eric. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
All
And
right.
I was going to say, if somebody books a trip with you, as we always end our episodes, what could go right?
Yes. What could go right? It would be
Hey there, this is Eric. Before we wrap up, I just want to give you the sailing update. We are heading into our 2027 season. As of this moment for 2026, we do have one solo spot on our Norway trip in 2026. That's September 3 through 10th in Norway. It's going to be an epic, beautiful sail in the Lofoten Islands. And then we've also got one solo female spot on our Bahamas trip in November the 9th through the 14th. And that's going to be in the Abacos northern part of the Bahamas. So those are the only two spots that we have left in 2026. Otherwise, 2026 is sold out. If there's any trip you want to jump on, you can join the wait list. But 2027, here's what we have going on. January 25th through the 30th, we're going to be in the Virgin Islands. That trip is also sold out, but we might open up another one in that same month or February. So if you want to go sailing this winter in the Virgin Islands, you can join the wait list for that. Just ping us and we'll send you the link to join that. In the Bahamas, March 1st through 6th, we're going to be in the Bahamas. It will most likely be in the Exumas, which is the southern part of the Bahamas, sailing out of Nassau. April 5 through 10, we're going to be in Mexico. La Paz, beautiful, stunning snorkeling, sailing, one of my favorite spots. So Mexico, April 5 through 10. May 1st through 8th, we are going to be in Tahiti and Bora Bora. The plan is to do a one-way sail from an island just off of Tahiti called Raiatea. Then we're going to sail the boat to Bora Bora, which is kind of like that iconic lagoon with those bungalows out over the water. Anyway, that's May 1st through the 8th. Then that's the end of our spring season, winter and spring, and we come over here to Europe. June 5 through 12th, we will be in Italy. And July 10th through the 17th, we will be in Greece. August 7th through the 14th, we'll be in Croatia. September 4th through the 11th, we'll be back in Italy. September 18th through the 25th, we'll be in Greece. These are our shoulder season trips. And then in November, we head back to the Virgin Islands, November 1 through 6, the British Virgin Islands. And then December 6th through the 11th, we'll be back in the Bahamas. So that is the 2027 lineup, the 2 empty spots for 2026. And if you want to join us for any of these, just hit reply to any one of our emails. You can DM us or contact us through social media, and would love to hear from you and see if this might be a fit for you. Would love to welcome you aboard.
We can talk about trips all day, but it's more fun to hear from someone who's been aboard. Here's a recent guest takeaway.
I'm Johnny Cash. Give a guy a microphone, he's got to perform, all right?
Come on, Ken Bob.
Yeah, oh boy, howdy. Well, aren't you dear? My biggest fear was that at my age, was my reach going to exceed my grasp? And so far, it's been okay, but check with me in about 48 hours and I'll tell you how many pieces fall off me when I get up on Monday morning. I have a memory now. I have learned skills, thank you to the captain. I have met wonderful people. I've gotten new outlooks on life. I've got memories of this special place, and they will last me for the rest of my life, whatever years I have left. This will be my last real big hurrah. This is really the end of my big. I have small adventures, but big adventures. So this is the one I wanted to have to remember. Yeah, for pity's sake, do it now, because otherwise you'll wait until it's too late, and then hard-won wisdom will tell you you're not supposed to jump from up there. Okay? And it's no fun if everybody else is doing it and you don't get to do it. So do it now. Do it while you can. And it's okay. Do it again if you like it. You know, come back. You will want to come back.